This garden bed is growing beans and squash. That's 2 out of 3 of the classic Native American 3 sisters. And that got me thinking that gardening isn't just something that gets us food. It links us to other times and other cultures. We've been growing food intentionally for over 10,000 years. And for most of those millennia, the people growing the food were remarkably smart about it. So that inspired this video where we're going to look at and appreciate 5 ancient gardening technologies and consider, are they still useful in the garden? So the technologies we're going to be exploring specifically are Ollas, Hugelkultur, Specularia, no-till gardening, and Waru Waru. So make sure you watch to the end to find out what is a Waru Waru and why does it work. At least 4,000 years ago in Persia and the Middle East, a revolutionary garden irrigation method was developed, and that is the Olla, or as we call them today, the terracotta pot. I don't know if they used terracotta, but they did use some sort of unglazed clay pot. Fired clay that has not been glazed is porous. In fact, the name Olla is just Latin for pot. What you can do is you take your unglazed clay pot and you bury it in the root zone of the plant you want to water, put some sort of lid on top, and the water will very slowly, through capillary action, make its way to the outside of the pot. If the soil around the pot is already saturated with water, that's as far as it will go. But if the soil is a little bit drier, then the water will be wicked out into the soil around the pot. And if there are any roots growing nearby, that water will be available to the plant. An Olla can have even less loss to evaporation than drip irrigation, which has been my favorite kind of irrigation so far, because I've invested heavily in the technology and it's all over my garden. Ollas may be more efficient even than that. A lot of people like to make their homemade Ollas by gluing 2 pots together like this and probably sealing around the seam with some silicone sealant or something else that's waterproof to make one larger pot. This will hold a lot of water and water to a very respectable depth. I chose not to do this because I was thinking about how fun this would be to clean out if I got a bunch of dirt in it. My experience is that the harder it is to do a thing, the less likely you are to do it. And I want to use this, so I've made it really easy to get into it. Ollas are an effective technology. In fact, there are a number of companies offering ready-made Ollas for sale. And you can even, if you have a hole in the lid of your Olla, you can plumb it into an existing drip irrigation system to make it even more efficient and automated so you don't have to muck about with stuff in your garden. So this is a technique that works because of the materials it's made of. This next one is going to be a technique that works because of what's inside of it. Hugelkultur was used by Germanic farmers for centuries for subsistent farming. It was largely unknown outside of Germany and the rest of Europe until it was popularized in the 1980s by the permaculture movement. Hugelkultur is just German for mound culture. I would demonstrate it for you if I had a pile of old sticks and logs that I could bury, but unfortunately I just don't seem to have one of those on hand. So the way it works is you just bury large chunks of rotting wood in a mound of soil. That mound can be like 6 feet high. Make sure that the sides are sloped so that you're not going to have it collapse on you, because that could be dangerous. Over the years, as the wood decomposes, it's going to re-release the nutrients that it used to grow back into the soil. So it serves as a nutrient reservoir for your garden. In addition to being a great nutrient reservoir, rotting wood can hold its weight in water. So it's kind of like an Olla if an Olla were solid and made of wood. There is one problem with Hugelkultur, and that is that if the wood that you use is too fresh, if it's not already rotting a little bit, it can absorb and lock up nitrogen from the soil to get that rotting process started. Hugelkultur is another gardening method that is actually ideal for an arid climate like here in Utah, especially if you're having a drought like we are here in Utah. So we've covered what to bury and how to water. Next, we're going to talk about how the ancient Romans grew food for their crazy emperor in the winter. Pliny the Elder, in approximately 77 BC, described a method by which Tiberius, the emperor of Rome, was able to keep fed with his sweet cucumbers throughout the year, even in the winter. These Roman hotbeds, called Specularia, were a pretty big advancement in gardening technology for their time. The name Specularia refers to panes made of a mineral called lapis specularis, which transmitted light very well, kind of like our glass hothouses do today. So this is the ancient origin of both the cold frame and the greenhouse, back over 2,000 years ago. So can you use Specularia in your garden today? You might already. If you're using a cold frame or a greenhouse, or in my case, sometimes both, there is a direct through line from ancient technology to what you're doing today. Because it's so popular right now, and because everyone's treating it like some sort of gardening revolution, no-till gardening may not seem terribly ancient, but I mean, what were they doing before they invented the plow? Japanese farmer Masanobu Fukuoka formalized the no-till gardening practice in 1975 with his book, One Straw Gardening. But the practice does go back to ancient rice farming and indigenous North American practices as well. And of course, everything before we invented the plow. So the premise behind no-till gardening is that when we disturb the soil, we interrupt mycorrhizal networks, little networks of tiny fungal fibers that permeate plant roots and stretch through the soil. These can form partnerships with the plants that allow for the exchange of nutrients over a larger area and help your plants grow. Mycorrhizal networks are amazing, and plants can even use the fungal networks to share nutrients with each other over some pretty surprising distances. And in exchange for this service, the plants will often pay with some of the sugar that they make using photosynthesis. Now, the one problem with no-till gardening is it doesn't work in all soils. If you have heavy clay soil, like I do right here, you're gonna have to break up that compaction, at least until you have amended your soil sufficiently that it stops compacting. My goal is to get to a point where I can use no-till growing methods, because it's not just superior, it's also a lot less work. And that brings us to the last growing technique, the most exotic, Waru Waru. Around 3,000 years ago, the Tiwanaku of the Peruvian Andes invented a pretty spectacular gardening system. They combined raised beds, I wonder where you're going to find some of those, with a system of canals spanning thousands of acres. This was called Waru Waru. This system was abandoned during the Spanish conquest of Central America and South America, and was only recently rediscovered by archaeologists. And that's too bad, because it's a pretty impressive gardening system. So the water in the channels between the mounds absorbs heat during the day. It's thermal mass.
I've got some thermal mass, and a good thermal mass really kicks some.
So during the nighttime, the water will release its heat back into the atmosphere as it cools and produce a little heat dome over the raised beds between the channels. This can keep the temperature higher than ambient by a few degrees, And that can mean the difference between a successful and a failed potato crop. The water also moderates the soil temperature, as well as providing an aquatic ecosystem around the raised beds, which can help supply nutrients to the crops. I think the Waru Waru are at least as impressive as what the Egyptians were doing at about the same time. When researchers restored the Waru Waru in the 1980s, they found that this method can help keep the crops at least 2 to 4 degrees Celsius above ambient temperature during cold snaps. This is pure science. The Andean farmers probably were not aware of water's specific heat and how incredibly useful it can be, but they did notice that this method works. And when your life depends on it, you're going to be pretty keen to stick with what works. This is not going to be one that we can directly apply in most gardens, but the technology is sound and it is old and it is fascinating. So a good modern analog would probably be row cover. If you put agricultural fleece over your crops during a cold snap, the soil acts as your thermal mass.
I've got some thermal mass.
And the trapped air above your crops can keep your temperature retention in about the same range as those water channels did. At the time, there wasn't a global economy to ship our textiles from sweatshops in Asia. We had to make everything locally. So it actually would have been more cost effective to put all that energy into raised beds with water channels between them. Now, it's just a row cover. What I find really interesting about all of these methods is that none of them were really invented by scientists, but all of them use science. I freaking love science, but you don't have to be a scientist to make observations and learn about the world around you, not formally at least. I think if you're doing it, you're a kind of scientist. And I think all of us benefit from using the science that we can in our gardens, whether it is modern science or ancient science. So why are there so many of these methods that we've stopped using today? I think the big answer is just modern industrial inputs in farming and gardening. We have synthetic fertilizers, we have cheap and plentiful treated water that is piped directly to our homes. There are a lot of ways that we have reduced scarcity in a way that allowed us to get away from these methods, but sometimes environmental stresses like this drought we're going through here in Utah can help direct our attention back towards, hey, maybe we should go back to some of these old ways and stop wasting so much material just because we can. Let me know in the comments, had you heard of any of these before? Which ones? Or which one of these methods did you think was the most interesting or the most applicable in your own garden? As always, before you run back off into the internet and let the algorithm plug the next thing into your attention hole, make sure you've liked this video and subscribed to my channel. I'm so glad that you were able to geek out about gardening with me today. Thank you for joining me here in my garden. I hope you have a wonderful time in your own.